Mm. Okay, Sharon, it's so great to see you. My good friend. We're both in Japan. Woohoo! um, you know, we both love Japan, and today I wanted to talk about dreams and visions because both of us have dreams and visions, but a lot of people just, negate them. And I wanted to ask you about a vision you told me once, because to me it was very revealing how a lot of women feel. And then when you're finished with the vision, if we could just talk about it a little bit. Do you remember when the Lord took you to heaven and you were standing beside your mom at that table? Why don't you just give me some of the details? Thanks.
Hi, I'm glad to be here with you. And this is a very personal, of course, this vision that I had. But I was talking with my mother in the natural in Ohio, and we were just visiting together and talking about things. And she began, as in the course of the conversation, she was talking about how she just did not feel worthy of God's blessings. My mother had been a Christian all of my life, and my dad too. And here, I just thought my mom and dad were just wonderful Christians, and I just felt that they knew the word of God and they just deserved anything good because they were just such precious people.
Weren't they in ministry also, Sharon?
Yes. My mom was a great teacher. My dad was a minister, and they were known when I was a young child as singers. They sang on the radio weekly and in the church meeting, and they also did, singing wherever we went. And they were just wonderful, wonderful Christians. And here my mother had become an elderly lady, and I looked at her, that anything she asked God to do, he would do it. It's just that kind of feeling that you have towards your parent that's really lived a beautiful Christian life before you, or throughout your life. And so here, as we sat there, my mom was continuing to say how she didn't deserve anything from God. She couldn't imagine him doing anything special for her. But I knew in my life I had watched God answer many of her prayers. But as we sat there talking together, all of a sudden, I myself began to have this vision, and it almost took my breath away. It was so real being in this vision, and yet she was right there, and I began to tell her, Mom, I'm trying to I need to tell you something. And she says, well, what is it, Sharon? And I said, Mom, I know you're sitting there and I'm sitting here, but I'm seeing something more than that. And I said, you and I are in the largest banquet hall I've ever been in my life. It's gorgeous. The furniture, the table is so long. It's almost impossible for you and I to see the other end of it. And yet we knew we were in this huge room, and so I began to talk to her about, I said, Mom, I can't describe it because the furniture is dark wood and just so gorgeous. I mean, to me, that's what it looked like at that time, and the table. But I noticed on the table, there were these many, many, many dishes, and it wasn't full of places, but it was full of many dishes to serve the people. And where anybody could go and just reach and take a dish of this and a dish of this. There were so many kinds of foods I couldn't begin to tell, to even begin to make a list of those many kinds of foods. All looked very tempting and it makes you want to just reach and take hold of it and eat it. And my mom says, well, honey, what do you mean? And I said, Mom, I said, just a minute. And I began to hear somebody's voice, and I didn't see them right away, the person. And then as I tried to talk with her, but yet I'm seeing this, all of a sudden I realized it was Jesus's voice. I had seen Jesus before more than once, and I had heard his voice many times, but I realized that was his voice, and it was so soft, so gentle, so loving, and so inviting. And he said, go ahead. He said, all of the food on this table is for you. And he was saying that to my mom. And I told her she wasn't hearing him because she was thinking that she wasn't worthy to hear him or to receive from him something so wonderful. And I said, Mom, I said, she said to me, but Sharon, she said, I'm not worthy. And I said, Mom, please don't say that. I said, because he's speaking this to you. I said, this is not my imagination. I'm not making this up because I don't do things like that. And my mom said, Sharon, honey, I know that. And I said, Mom, he loves you so, so, so very much. And I said, I'm so sorry you're not hearing his voice, but he is talking directly to you. He's not talking to me at this time. And so gently, he continued to tell her, every dish on this table is for you. Everything that you see, everything you see here is for you. And I continued to tell my mom what he was saying. And she just sat there and began to cry and cry and cry. And my mom was not a woman who was that kind of crying, but she just so gently, so lovingly just was receiving what I was telling her, but still here, somehow there was that block of feeling that she wasn't worthy. And so after it seemed that this vision, after several minutes, actually, this vision stopped. And I just looked at my mom and I said, Mom, I said, I tried to explain to her what I had seen. And she said, honey, I heard you. I knew you were seeing that. I said, but Mom, it was for you. And she said, you don't know how hard that is for me to believe that, for me to receive that. And I said, but Mom, you've known the Lord all my life. You've served him all my life. Mom, why would you think he would not give you the best of the best? And she just looked at me and she said, I've never felt worthy of God's love. And I said, but Mom, I have watched how he's blessed you. I've watched how he's poured his love upon you and in you. And there have been times when you've praised him and you look like an angel straight from heaven, And I said, but Mom, and then finally, as she said it one more time, I looked at her and I said, Mom, do you know why you're like that? Why you've been like that and why you've spoken like that for so long? No, I have no idea. I said, Mom, when you really stop and think about it, what that's called is a religious spirit. And I said, Mom, religious spirit makes us believe and think we're worthy based on what we do. I said, but Jesus did it all. And he said, it's finished. When he paid the price, when he shed his blood, when he suffered, he paid the price for our healing. He paid the price for our salvation. That was the time that it was paid for. And Mom, all the different things you've done in church work and to try to do this and this and this and this, Mom, it's in our thinking, we think that's made us become worthy. but there's nothing we can do to be worthy. It's us receiving his love and giving him our love. And I said, Mom, I've watched you do that all my life. So, Mom, you are very, very worthy. And I love him because I've watched you love him. And that made me realize how important this relationship is personally with him. And so I never forgot that vision because it changed me. And so that's my
Oh,
my
it's,
part of it.
it so many times along the way, whether it's you, me, or somebody else, people will say things to us, or we'll get the wrong teachings. Or I remember when I did a particular writing, and somebody who was was a pastor, very intellectual, he said, no, that's not what the word says. But you know something, I look back and I think, yeah, but that's what God said to me. And this banquet, when I was setting up my private group on Facebook, I prayed about what I should call it. And Abba, of course, means my dear Father. Doesn't matter whether it's Jesus, Father, when our God is one.
Amen.
But, so there's this banquet table because of this deep, deep, deep love that we can't fathom. It's out of our worldly thoughts. But somehow so many believers are caught into this spirit, like this person who I was crushed for years. I didn't want to write for years because of what one intellectual person said. Well, as you said, Sharon, it's a religious spirit. And recently I did a counseling session. The first thing the woman said was, multi-talented, loves the Lord. I really don't think he loves me.
Oh, no.
Wow. And I'm thinking, of course, the Lord gave me, strategy and whatnot, but and I thought, wow, here's the God of the universe who lives outside of time, who planned and purposed us, each one of
Yeah.
us,
Mm.
that we were in his heart before time was even made to be born for right now.
Yes, yes.
And isn't that a sneaky thing of the enemy to say, you're not worthy? To have this mind play, you're not worthy, you're not worthy. How do you think that's affecting people,
Everybody.
especially, as women? How do you think it's affecting women, especially in ministry or going forward? Or are they getting in their own way, Sharon? Are they negating God's plans and purposes because they don't appreciate how beautifully, wonderfully excited God is over them, over every part of their lives? What do you think?
Do you really want to know what I think?
Yes, I really want to know what you think. That's why we're so good together, because we bounce things off, and that's a good thing.
This is one thing that I believe, and I feel that God has been opening my eyes and making me realize that the thing that keeps the enemy the busiest and all of his workers, you might say, under him, it keeps them the busiest is they must try very hard to keep people who become a Christian from knowing who they really are, from realizing when Jesus forgives you of your sin and when you invite him into your heart, everything you need from him, he's already given to you because he came in to your heart. He's already provided you with everything. He's provided you with authority, with power, and with anything you need, he's already provided for you. because the word says, I will supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. There's nothing we have need of. There's nothing that we could possibly need that he's not already provided.
Absolutely.
But we just miss it in realizing, like my mom, we miss realizing he's already provided it for us, but we keep praying for him to give it to us. But we already have it.
That's right.
And we keep asking him to help us become more powerful, become more, have stronger faith. But he's the one who gives us the faith, and he's already given us the faith. Each and everything that we can think about in our prayer time and all of this, it's already been provided. And the
Amen.
enemy stays busy, the busiest, to make us not realize that what we really already have. Because
Right.
if we realize who we are, if we realize what we have, and we realize what we can do, oh my goodness, he would have been thrown away a long time ago.
Well, father of
That's my
lies,
simple
right?
word. That's my simple word, thrown away. Yes.